The following is a Podbeard production.
From the deepest bowels of your imagination.
Actually, he's from Canada there, bud.
From the famed Hotter Show studios, this is The Hotter Show.
What is up, everybody? We are rolling out here today on episode 212 of The Hotter Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic today. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. I have a very interesting episode for you here today, guys, as this is a very cathartic episode of The Hotter Show. And it's a very ranty episode of The Hotter Show, as I'm talking about something that affects all of us, and that is bullying. I discuss a little bit about kind of some statistics behind bullying in Canada. I just speak about Canada and Ontario and that. And kind of my thoughts on some certain things that are said and my own experiences. And then I kind of do a bit more of a deep dive into my own personal stories with bullying, which is something that a lot of people don't share a whole lot anymore, is talking about the experience with bullying, especially people around my age group. I really feel it's something that it's still fresh enough to us that it's up to people like myself and people in our age group to let people know who are younger. They're like, hey, wasn't that long ago we were in your shoes? So we're going to go into that today. But before I do, I want to thank everybody for the support on last week's episode of the show. And also, again, for the live stream love that I did with King Catalyst. That was a lot of fun, and it's still getting some hits, so thank you guys very much for that. But the one last week was cool, doing the whole internet mystery thing. Very interesting. Had a couple people hit me up, and they were like, dude, like, this website's so weird. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty weird. It's what it is, though. But it's all in good fun, you know? We like to have fun here on The Hotter Show, but this episode is definitely a lot more serious. You know what else is serious? The deals that you will find over at seatgiant.com or .ca, my friends, you do not need to look any further than SeatGiant if you are looking for tickets to any kind of theater event, music event, any kind of family event, sporting events. Do not mess around with anyone else. Go on seatgiant.ca or .com today. Super easy interface to use. You're not going to get lost or anything. You go on, search for the event that you're looking for. Or if you're like, you know what, I feel like going to a sporting event of some kind or a concert. I don't know what's going on, what's around my city right now. Go on there. Either go to the sporting section, of course, and look for the sport in question you are looking for. Maybe you want to go see a hockey game or a basketball game or lacrosse or rugby or whatever the hell people watch nowadays. I don't know. Or if you are looking for a certain specific concert, event, or if you're looking for a type of genre, you can go on there and be like, it's rock concerts coming into my area. They have tons of different concerts, tons of different types of tickets, whether you want to just get some cheap seats and sit in nosebleeds or whatever, or if you want to be front row, front and center for everything, you can do that and find those seats on Seat Giant. They have a great map which is highlighted to where exactly you're going to sit in adjacent to where the stage or the rink or the court is. So there's no messing around with that. You're not going to be like, oh, where am I sitting again? I can't remember. Super easy to use, guys. Great prices. You don't have to mess around with any hidden fees or any of that kind of bullcrap. It's all up front. And the best thing about it, ladies and gentlemen, is if you use the coupon code PODBEARD, that is PODBEARD, PODBEARD, you'll save yourself a little something at checkout and help out your friends here at the Podbeard Network. What's not to like? Don't mess around with anyone else. Go on seatgiant.ca or .com, depending on where you are listening to this in the world, and pick up the tickets for your event today. Seat Giant, they don't just sell tickets, they sell experiences. But we're ready to jump into my own personal experiences with bullying, and as well as me giving into a little bit on statistics of bullying in Canada. Hope you guys enjoy this. Strap in. It's going to be a hell of a chat. Let's get into it. All right, so we are talking about something today that is definitely a little uncomfortable for some people, and that's perfectly okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that it is okay to be uncomfortable with it, but it's something that needs to be talked about because I am really fired up about this today, especially yesterday, because I had a bit of a interesting incident, which I will briefly talk about. And that, my friends, as the title of this podcast is bullying. Bullying in general. Bullies get brass. And first off, before I go any further, let me just say that tagline is actually from an old shirt that actually Mean Clothing Company had. Bullies get brass, which was a bit of a thing they were campaigning there back in the day a little bit, as far as just an overall message of anti-bullying. Bullying is not freaking cool, man. Bullies are people who, and I'm freeballing this, I'm not looking at any definition or anything. A lot of this is going to be me just freeballing. I haven't done an episode like this in a long time, so bear with me, but I really want to talk about this. Bullies are basically somebody who either puts someone down verbally, physically, indirectly through pictures, or telling other people things, spreading gossip, threatening somebody. Even if it's an indirect thing, it is still bullying. Bullying is also not just something that happens to children, which is something I think a lot of people don't really talk about. And it's kind of weird that people do not discuss that. So I want to dive into that. But mainly, bullying happens to kids. And it happens a lot in high school. It happens in elementary school. It happens in middle school. It happens everywhere. And the fact that it is 2019, okay, and there have been so many deaths related to bullying, suicides related to bullying, which just destroys me anytime I hear anything like that, because it's so preventable. And it's just a joke that at this point in our society, this is still happening. Now, I know, unfortunately, bullying is never going to go away. And it sucks. And that is a horrid truth on our society. But listen, it's not going to go away as much as I wish it would. And I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you're going to agree with everything I have to say today. But there is no reason that in this day and age, it should be happening still, especially to the extent that it is. And it makes me so mad that I'm like, man, I want to talk about it and I want to share my experiences with it, because a lot of people are afraid to talk about bullying. So it's up to people who aren't afraid to talk about it to stand up and say, you know what? Hey, this happens. Okay, this happens to everybody. It's not just you. Bullying is something that happens to everybody. And a lot of the times, and I'm speaking more for children and teenagers and that, a lot of the times they are told, oh, it's just kids being kids and stuff. And listen, like I said earlier, I know that bullying is never going to go away. There's always going to be kids that are teasing each other and stuff. And I know that's not going to go away. But there are certain levels of bullying. No bullying is acceptable, but certain levels of bullying, it's just, there's no need for it. There is no need for it. If you tease somebody and they basically tell you it genuinely upsets them and to stop, you should stop. There's no excuse for it. There's no, there's the whole adage of boys will be boys, they tease each other and stuff. And like, as much as I think that's kind of bullcrap because there's no need for it, it's going to happen. But if you are taking things way too far, which what is something that can happen a lot, and make fun of somebody because of the way they look or because of their race, which is a whole other conversation, or their sexual orientation, which is again almost a whole other conversation, or even things like, their parents being divorced, or them being raised by a single mother or a single father, or them being adopted or whatever. Like, it's ridiculous. Okay. It's also not acceptable to make fun of someone for the shoes they wear or something like that. Like, okay, but there are different levels of bullying. But overall, what I'm trying to get across here today is none of it's acceptable. And I want to share a couple of stories from my past that I have dealt with bullying, because like I said, it's something that I don't think a lot of people talk about. And I strongly implore you, if you are somebody who has dealt with bullying and you want to talk about it, to talk about it. And I'm not doing this on the anti-bullying month or the anti-bullying day or week or whatever the hell. This is me doing something I used to do a lot on the show, especially in the early days, where I would just spitball and I would just freestyle and would just talk about whatever was on my mind. And this is what's on my mind and on my heart right now because of an incident that happened yesterday, which I'm going to talk about probably near the end of this episode. But before I talk about my personal experiences with bullying, I want to kind of throw some statistics at you guys. And I'm getting this from prevnet.ca, which is basically a site dedicated to talking about preventive bullying and things of that nature, and also tons of other stuff as well. You know, hashtag spreading kindness, different organizations, promoting relationships and eliminating violence, tons of different stuff. But we're focusing on bullying today because that's what I want to talk about here. So some random facts I'm going to kind of throw at you. Now, I'm not sure when these were taken. I would like to say that unfortunately some of these are probably a little outdated. Some of them are probably have raised up, which is ridiculous. But again, that's why we're talking about it. That's why someone like me is talking about it. If I can get through to one person maybe who has the ability to make a difference, or they see something, we can make a difference. We really can. So 28 universities, over 100 researchers, and this is all real data. So number one, 75% of people say that they have been affected by bullying. So here's the thing with that. Like I said, a lot of people have been affected by bullying. A lot of people. But a lot of people who they don't talk about it is what I mean. They suffer silently. And as somebody who did suffer silently for quite a while with bullying on my own personal experience, that's not the way to handle it. The best thing to do is to say something. But we're going to talk about that in a little bit here. Fact number 2, which is pretty self-explanatory, but bullying can cause serious harm. Children who are bullied suffer headaches, depression, and anxiety, or raised risk of headaches, depression, and anxiety. Children who bully or who have been bullied are at increased risk of suicide, which is a whole other conversation, which is talking about the children and the kids and teenagers and that who are bullying. That is a whole other conversation. Children who bully are an increased risk to likely become with criminal activity. Kind of goes hand in hand, unfortunately. 60% of males who bully in school have criminal records by 24, which is crazy. A simple solution to this, as far as we're talking about kids, identify children at risk and help them develop healthy relationships. Fact number 3. This is kind of I agree with this and don't agree with this. Fighting back makes bullying worse. When children are aggressive to deal with a bullying problem, they experience more prolonged bullying and severe bullying as a result. Solution: be assertive, not aggressive. Send the message that bullying is not okay. Report it to an adult. Be clear and respectful. Okay. I do agree with that a lot. If you are in a situation where you are being bullied, a lot of the times saying something back to the person or trying to be super aggressive is not the answer. Every case is different. If we're dealing with kids and children, yeah, that's obviously completely different. But also reporting it to an adult is not going to stop it. And that's the kind of message sometimes that some of these organizations send, and it's just I don't agree with that 100%. And I know I have a kind of unpopular opinion on it. But you know what? Listen, sometimes reporting it makes it worse. Now, in my personal experience, it solved the one bullying issue I had. So it can work depending on the situation and the age group. Once you get into high school and that, guess what? Totally different situation. However, you should always still report it or talk to somebody. Even if it's talking to your parents or an adult you trust, you should still talk about it. And in this day and age, I want to believe that reporting it would help. But that's for different types of bullying. If there's physical bullying, unfortunately, sometimes the only way to stop that is to punch the bully directly in his face or her face. Now, I say that and chuckle because I'm not promoting violence here on the show. I mean, I kind of am against bullies because that's just my opinion on the matter. But listen, if you're being physically bullied and you report that bully, unfortunately, there's probably a good, I'd say 25 to 50% chance it's going to continue and it's going to get worse. Whereas if you physically stand up to that bully, I want to believe there's a chance they're going to be like, okay, like this guy's not a pushover. Bullies tend to attack people who they feel either will not fight back, who will just take it, or who they can physically dominate. But if you respond in kind to that bully, at least in my experience, guess what? It stops. So in this day and age, I want to believe that's not the way anymore. But guess what? Sometimes the unfortunate reality is you have to have that positive, aggressive attitude towards it, which is you don't want things to become physical, but if they absolutely need to, you can. And that's, again, not a popular opinion. I understand that. But that is how I personally feel about it. I've talked to a couple people about this, and someone asked me, would you say that to your child if they were being bullied? Absolutely, I would. I would first tell them, we're going to try and solve this with our words first, because I'm not a violent guy. But guess what? If my child came home the next day with a black eye or whatever, I'd be like, all right. So, well, if I went to the school and they didn't do anything about it either, I would pursue all channels to the point where I'd probably even call the child's parents directly and say, listen, like, here's what's going on. And if it did not stop, then unfortunately, guess what would happen next? I would teach my child to lay that kid out. Done. No more bullying problem. Works every time. So, hey, is what it is, man. When it comes to bullies and people like that, people who have had the opportunity to not be a bully and who you've given chances to, guess what? Sometimes that's the only way to solve it. Is what it is. My opinion, if you don't agree with it, that is perfectly okay. Like I said, I still do. I'm like maybe 50-50 on it. But I do agree that if you can be assertive and have that positive, aggressive attitude towards things, be clear, be respectful, and just be like, yo, man, stop. Like, what is your problem? Just stop. It can be solved. Or if you see someone being bullied and you can stop it in that manner, absolutely do it. But guess what? Sometimes you got to step in between the bully and the person being bullied and just be like, all right, man, pick on someone your own size. That's just is what it is. That's the reality of the situation. It happens. There's no point in us beating around the bush about it. That does happen. I want to believe it doesn't happen as much anymore as it used to, but that's what it is. Anyway, I spent way too much time on this. Fact number 4, and this is a big one too. Peers are drawn to bullying. Peers are present in 90% of bullying incidences. Audience give those who bully attention and social status, which is bullshit. Bystanders learn the negative use of power in relationships. When peers intervene, most instances stop within 10 seconds. Therefore, teach kids to be heroes. Now, a couple things on that point. In my experiences, every time I was bullied, someone was present in that person's friend group. And they had the opportunity to stop it, and they did not. In the first experience I had with bullying, the other person got involved a lot. Not as much, but they did get involved quite a bit. So it is unfortunate to think about that, you know what, like, and the really messed up part is when the whole thing came to a head, that person said to me, I knew it was wrong and I didn't do anything to stop it. And I'm sorry, but I didn't feel right about it. Okay. So now you stop it. And when push came to shove, that person assisted in a way in getting it to stop. So that's okay. Bygones be bygones. I have forgiven all those individuals. But doesn't mean you can't talk about it. Teaching your kids and your teenagers, and even just in general in life, because again, bullying doesn't just happen in the schoolyard, folks. That's the reality of the situation. Teaching them to be heroes and stand up, especially someone who is, if you're a big person and you're, kind of a tough person or whatever, and you see bullying and you stop it and you're like, hey, like pick on someone your own size, like good on you. You're a hero as far as I'm concerned. But if you're in that situation where you're gifted with, being height and being a big person or whatever, and you bully people, like, man, come on, just don't do that. Don't do that. And also this website, if you are potentially maybe a parent listening to this and you're maybe looking for ways to help teach your kids to stop bullying if they see it, this website, it does recommend you go on, again, it's prevnet.ca for positive intervention methods. So something to think about. But again, sometimes you got to teach your kid how to defend themselves, is what it is. Fact number 5, and this is a big one. Cyberbullying is getting worse. Duh. Over 1/3 Canadian teens have seen cyberbullying take place. 1 in 5 teenagers now report being victimized electronically. 80% of teens have seen racist or sexist content online. Make an impact. Take advantage of privacy settings on social media. Use block and report tools to stop cyberbullying in its tracks. Screen cap and save all instances of cyberbullying you see. We aren't doing enough. Straight up we aren't. And it's ridiculous. Here's the thing on that. I've never been a victim of cyberbullying. I was out of basically halfway through high school when cyberbullying kind of started really becoming a thing. But there was an incident in my school where there was someone who was cyberbullied quite badly. And it was a joke. It was ridiculous that it happened. And a lot of people played into it. And they were like sharing, there was a picture basically of someone. I'm not going to go into any more than that. But they were sharing the picture around and like they thought it was hilarious. And they're sharing statuses about, oh, it's so funny that this person did this or this person's this or whatever. And it's like, man, what are you doing? Why? Like, I don't understand. But that being said, too, using a unflattering picture of somebody and making fun of it, guess what? That's bullying. Now, as someone who uses memes a lot, I think there's a fine line between using an unflattering picture of somebody with their permission in certain contexts. For example, if I was to have an unflattering picture of me and someone had, hey man, can I use this to make a meme? I would have no problem with it. Because it's kind of like poking fun, kind of taking the piss out of something. I think that is different from cyberbullying. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, cyberbullying, if you are not welcoming anything like that, guess what? That's cyberbullying. If you're going on saying, hey guys, roast me, that's different. That's not cyberbullying. Because I've seen that too, where people go on like Reddit and they do the whole hashtag like roast me or whatever on Reddit. And then they get mad and saying you guys are bullying me. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, you asked for it. I'm not saying it's okay. I think those whole things are stupid, but guess what? It happens. But as far as not doing enough, just if you see stuff like that, why you like don't freaking share it? What are you doing? Stop. Come on, man. I don't understand. Bullying rates in Canada are higher than 2/3 of other countries, which is insane. Half of students report that bullying is a problem in their high school. 78% of Canadians believe that not enough is being done to stop bullying in their community. What can you do? Well, guess what? Best thing you can do is intervening when you can, in the best way that you can and that you feel is the best way to do so. If you are somebody who is seeing it firsthand, stop it. Put a stop to it. Hey, that's not right. That's not okay. Like, come on, seriously? And a lot of the times, you call someone on it, they're going to be like, I'm not bullying this person. Yeah, you are. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, I want to believe some people who have been involved with minor bullying, which guess what? It's still not okay, but that's neither here nor there. I do believe there are some instances where people will not realize what they're doing. I truly believe that. Some people out there are good people and they're kind of hazing somebody and it's like, they're in on it. It's cool. But guess what? That person's not in on it and they're not okay with it. And if that person says something, a lot of the time those people will be like, oh man, like, I'm sorry. I thought like we were all kind of just joking around. But also, if someone calls them on it, they're going to say the same thing. Like, oh, like I thought we were all kind of like taking, oh, okay, my bad. I'm sorry. Like, hey man, like we cool? Like, sorry about that. Like, as much as it still isn't okay, guess what? It can happen. Okay. It can happen. Most people have accidentally bullied someone at some point in their life without realizing it. As weird as that sounds, again, still doesn't make it okay, but it happens. You will think someone's making a joke or about themselves or whatever. You get involved with it. And then next thing you know, that person's upset because they're like, oh, wow, like people actually think this way about me. I was joking or something along those lines. So just be cool. Be nice to everybody. It's not hard. It's so easy to be nice to people, man. I just don't understand why people have to be so filled with hate towards people. I just don't get it. It confuses me, man. And it still goes on to some people into their adult life. And that's the really messed up part. But I want to share some of my experiences with bullying from my childhood and a little bit into high school, but not so much. And then I want to share a little bit of a story of something that happened yesterday that has triggered this whole thing in my head and got me all riled up to talk about bullying today. But before I do, I want to take a second to give a much needed shout out to my good friend, Mr. Jason Reese from Jaybird Digital Arts. If you guys are in need of any kind of t-shirts, logos, photo manipulation, maybe an album cover, stationery, or mailers for your business, anything you need that is design oriented, my dude Jaybird has your back. He's done everything for the Harder Show as far as logos, banners, memes. He's done some of that stuff for us, all my t-shirts, and he also has done work for Podbeard Network shows like Two Guys in a Game, Mikes and Beers. So you know you are getting the best, and he is also one of the best dudes you will ever meet. So not only is he a great designer, not only does he give you phenomenal pricing with surprisingly quick turnaround. Like sometimes I'll even hit him up for stuff and I'll be like, Jesus, man, like, how did you get that done so quick? Do you ever sleep? The answer is no, by the way. # no days off. But he's a wonderful person. So who better to support than someone who is just a cool dude and who wants to see you succeed with the best looking logos and t-shirts and album covers and stuff for your business that he can possibly provide you. Go on www.jaybirddigitalarts.com today. Contact him and let him know that your boy Hodder sent you, and he'll give you a little discount ski. And who doesn't like to save money, okay? Even though it's worth paying full price for, he'll give you a little discount. Quick turnaround. Don't mess around with anybody else. Contact my dude Jason at Jaybird Digital Arts today. Well, and, while we're spitballing and we're hanging and I'm curious, do you guys listen to the show right now? Which, thank you so very much for that, by the way. You having a good time? You being entertained? Maybe you listen to the show on iTunes or Spotify, CastBox, SoundCloud, YouTube. However you listen to the show, you're being entertained, which is awesome. But wouldn't it be great if there was a way you could earn something while listening? Now you can, guys, by using the Podcoin app. I just started using this app and I absolutely love it. You can get it on either for any Apple devices or Android devices. Super easy to download. It is 100% free. You do not need to pay for this app. It has every podcast imaginable, including, of course, yours truly, The Harder Show, as well as all the other Podbeard Network shows. It is painfully easy to use. You go on, you subscribe to the shows you want, you listen to them just the way you would on any other podcast player, but you earn Podcoin to use towards tons of different gift cards. For example, there's an Amazon gift cards on there, Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks, Google Play, even Target. And if you're not into that, you can also use them to donate to charity and give to causes, which is an amazing thing to do. I actually do a bit of both right now. I'm giving a little something and I'm getting a little something on the side. So what's not to like, guys? Download the Podcoin app today and use my code HODDER, that is HODDER, HODDER with a capital H, and you'll get 300 Podcoin absolutely free. It is so simple. Don't mess around. Download the Podcoin app today and start getting paid to listen to your favorite podcasts today. So jumping back into the bullying talk here today on the show, I want to share my experiences with bullying. And what I mean by that is the personal times in my life where I was bullied, because I was, and I was able to get out of the situation and I did not suffer silently. So I am kind of the person who stood up for myself or who went to an adult, and it did work one time. And that's why I kind of have both sides of the coin, which when I kind of tell these stories, which obviously I'm going to edit a little bit for the podcast. I'm not going to go into as much detail in these people's names or anything, obviously, but that's why I'm 50-50. Now, these stories all happened to me before the age of 16. I was quite young. I had a couple run-ins with some bullies in high school, like later, but it never was anything super serious. It was always shut down. I always shut it down and put up with that crap. So I don't have any stories, like later in high school of me like squaring up with a bunch of bullies in the parking lot or any of that kind of stuff. So don't worry, you're not going to hear any like outrageous situations like that. But just jumping into it, the first time I witnessed bullying was when I was literally a child. I was a kid, and there was a boy at my school who was a pretty well-known bully. He had his reasons. He had some stuff going on in his personal life and that. But again, that is not an excuse to bully somebody and make someone feel worse about themselves because you are going through stuff and don't feel good about yourself. That's not how to handle it. There's no excuse for it. But you kind of, you can see and kind of feel for the person later on in life. He got to be a pretty great guy from what I understand. But, I knew him as a bully, unfortunately. So that's kind of unfortunate. But basically, what had happened was I was well, let's just call it like it is. I was a big kid. I was a fat kid, and I would be bullied about that quite a bit by random people. And it never really bothered me. I always just kind of laughed it off. I was a pretty happy-go-lucky kid. I was always nice to everybody. I just like to make people laugh and entertain people and stuff like that. So a lot of my experience early in my life with bullying, I didn't understand what was going on. I would say something and people would laugh, and I'd be like, oh, I'm making people laugh. Oh, this is great. I'm entertaining them. Whereas in reality, they were making fun of me, and I just didn't really realize it. And that's what happened to bullying when I would witness it. I'd witness somebody say something really mean to someone else. And, I was kind of like, well, that's not right. But the person's kind of laughing it off. So like, oh, it must be a joke. So I thought it was okay. Come to find out years later that person was not okay with it. And they were secretly suffering because they hated coming to school. And like, that's horrid. That's just brutal. And again, that's why you got to teach kids what is okay and what isn't okay, because sometimes they won't know. And sometimes the people that are being bullied will just kind of laugh it off and they'll shrug it off and they'll act like it won't bother them, but it is, and it will bother them. And in my personal experience, when it came to a head for me, when I realized, oh man, like they're not laughing with me, they're laughing at me. This was in grade 5. And to some of you who are listening who knew me back then, you'll know this story. You'll know exactly who I'm talking about. And I'm not going to say this person's name. This person, like I said, apparently after this incident, they never bullied again. They kind of turned their life around. And apparently at the end of their school career, were a pretty good guy. And so it's all good. It's a happy story. You know, I'd love to run into that guy sometime now and just be like, what's up, man? How you doing? You know, just to kind of, because like, it was cool. We buried the hatchet after. But basically what had happened, what was happening was this guy was mercilessly making fun of me for my size, for my weight. But the number one thing he would do, and this was again, why I didn't really realize it was bullying until it kind of hit me one day. And I think it was actually someone said something to me. He would make fun of me for how I would eat. Now, if y'all know me in real life, you know, okay, I like my food, obviously. Okay, I'm a big guy. That's cool. I'm happy with that. Positive body image, so on and so forth. But I eat like I would say a pig or a duck. Like I'm a very aggressive eater. And when I was a kid, it was even worse. Because I would just like shove food in my mouth because I was like, I was still hungry, I guess. I don't know. So this kid would sit with all his friends and they'd like watch me eat. And he would always say, oh, it's time for TJ's eating opera. They'd sit and they'd basically watch me eat and make fun of me the whole time and laugh at me. And I would like kind of play it up a little bit. Because I'd like, oh, I'm entertaining them. I'm being funny. And this went on for, oh man, I want to say pretty much almost the whole year. It pretty much started on the first day of grade 5 and went pretty much to the end of the year, man. It went a long way. And it wasn't until about halfway through the school year that it really started getting bad, where he would be like, you know, I would like walk into the class and he'd be like, oh, everyone get out of the way. Teacher's coming through. And like, again, I thought it was like, he's being cool or whatever. Oh yeah, teacher's coming through. Cool. But no, he was saying that's how big I was. Oh, teacher's coming through. Everyone get out of the way. You know, there was a time where like, I would like get up out of my chair and he'd be like, beep, beep, stuff like that. And I'm like, you know, again, I thought it was funny. I thought it was just, oh, I'm being comedic. I'm entertaining. And he would, you know, talk to his friends about like how fat I was. And like, he'd do it right in front of me. Like he'd do it within earshot, where it was almost like this, it was, the joke to them was the fact that I didn't realize they were making fun of me and that he was making fun of me. And he would get people in on this whole, they'd watch me eat my lunch and they'd be like, this whole like TJ's eating opera thing. And that, I want to say it did stop a little bit when I believe my teacher caught wind of it. And she kind of pulled me aside one day and was like, what's up with this? Like, is this, you're clearly not okay with this. And I was like, no, it's cool. It's all kind of a joke, you know, like blah, blah, blah. And because again, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like, I'm being entertaining and funny. And again, in reality, that was not what was going on. And it wasn't until one day I'm sitting there and I want to say I ate my lunch early for some reason. And I was sitting there in the lunch period and they were like disappointed that I didn't have my lunch so they couldn't have their entertainment for the lunch period. And I'm kind of sitting there and they're like imitating me, you know, you know. And some of you might be laughing while I'm saying this. That's okay that you are, because I'm kind of chuckling about it too now. As an adult, I look back and I'm like, yeah, I did kind of eat funny. You know what I mean? Like I accept that. And guess what? I still do. You ever watch me down a freaking cheeseburger or something? I mean, it's funny. It's hilarious, you know, but it doesn't mean you can bully someone about it. If my buds kind of take the piss out of me about it, that's one thing. It's like, hey man, you chew that thing? Like, but it's a completely different situation than someone who I don't know, or someone who makes comment about my weight in a really like harsh way that I don't know. I'm like, whoa, like the hell was that? But back to my back to my story. So it was this one day where I realized that, like, you know, they were making fun of me. And right around this time, actually, Shrek had come out, or was out for a little bit. And they started referring to me as Shrek. And they were imitating me on this lunch period. And I'm like sitting there like, this doesn't feel good. I don't like this. And it was one of the kids. I wish I could remember who it was. Maybe you listen to this. I don't know. And he kind of pulled me aside and was like, dude, like, they're making fun of you pretty mercilessly. Like, you can't be okay with this. And I was like, oh, you know, it's kind of a big joke. And I'm kind of entertaining them. And he's like, no, man, like, this is not okay. Actually, I remember exactly who it was now. I can't believe I forgot. Shout out to that person. They know who they are. And they listen to the show once in a while, so he'll know. But, and I was just like, what do you mean they're making fun of me? And it was this horrible realization that I'm being bullied. Like, this whole time, I've been the butt of their joke. And it was horrible to realize that I'm just like, what the, like, I'm Shrek to them. I'm this big ogre, and I'm this, this fat kid who sits there eating my food, and I sound like I'm a pig, and like, they're making fun of me. And I'm like, wow, it was instantly like my world just shut down. I was like, wow, this does not feel good. This is horrid. And I remember coming home, and I didn't talk to anyone about it. I again, that silent suffering. I remember sitting in my room, and like, I didn't want to do anything. I just sat there and I just stared at the wall, and I was like, I felt like I was like the lowest scum of the earth. And it was this horrible feeling of like, I think more for me, it was really, really bad because I thought that wasn't the case. I'd heard about bullying, and they talked about it in assemblies and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's not me. I'm not being bullied. Teacher pulled me aside and was like, you can't be okay with this. And wasn't until it was kind of pointed out to me and they started really getting into me about it that I was like, oh, wow, this has been happening this entire time. So I want to say a couple months went by, and during this time, I would try and stand up for myself. I kind of realized, like, okay, this isn't okay. And I'd start like eating in like the back of the class, which is not the way to do things, because then they just fall. He'd just come back. And I remember the one day we kind of got into a bit of, where like I said some pretty harsh stuff to him, and it just made it worse. And it wasn't okay that I did that, because I want to say I made comments about like he had a pretty stupid haircut at the time, from what I remember correctly. And I made comments like about his haircut, and like I was basically bullying him back, or I was trying to. But of course, he just laughed it off, and it was nothing to him. The kid he was bullying him back, and he thought it was laughable, as did his friend, and as did some of his group of people who were there. So this one guy who I'm not naming out of respect. I kind of want to name him, but I'm just, we'll call him CM. He'll know who he is. So I say at this part of the story, he'll know who he is. But he kind of started like hanging out with me a bit, and like kind of like trying to be like, hey man, like, because he was a cool kid. He was kind of a popular kid, and not kind of, he was. And he was just like, hey man, like, he basically got to know me, and he was trying to stop it. He was like, yo guys, like, leave TJ alone. Like, he's a good dude. And they kind of sort of laid off a bit, because they're like, oh, well, if CM is his buddy, then, I mean, he can't be that bad. He must be, something's going on here that he must be, But I want to say he had to change classes or something like that, because he wasn't in that class anymore. Or maybe it was because this was at lunch period. I don't remember the very specifics, but he wasn't around. And I would only see him at recess, or whenever I would go to the special education room, which, yes, I do have a learning disability, and I went there quite a bit. Oddly enough, they never attacked that, which is, to this day, I still think, like, I'm like, man, like, that would have been even worse if they started attacking that. But for some reason, he had the common decency to not go that far, which is kind of weird to think about. But that's, it's another story. We get into that in a little bit here with my other bullying situations. But I remember one day this whole thing came to a head, and this is where the story gets, I mean, it's sad for me to think about. I get sad thinking about it, but I was getting really upset and just, I was hating myself. I was, I wasn't eating my lunch in the classroom or around people. I would go in the bathroom and eat my lunch, which is like, it's horrible. It's only happened a couple times, and again, I didn't say anything to anybody. My parents never knew this was going on. No one of the teachers ever knew this was going on. It wasn't happening. And I can remember one in particular day, I came to school. I started trying to stay home from school, and, I would like fake being sick, and like, my mom was mom's a wonderful woman. And the first couple times, like, she was like, is something going on? Like, what's up? And I was just like, no, I don't feel well. And I was clearly faking it. But I think she knew something was going on. But like, I mean, if you ask 100 times and you are sincere about it and they say anything, what are you supposed to do? I want to believe, I think she even like may have like called around to some parents or something. Like, when I remember, like, she tried her best to get it out of me, but it didn't happen. I wasn't ready to talk about it. So I went to school the one day, and I'm sitting in the lunch period, and it's happening. They're being merciless with me. And I remember just getting up and leaving, and I walked around the halls for a little bit. My buddy CM kind of like saw me and was like, oh, what's up, man? What are you doing? I'm like, nothing. And we ended up going to the special education room, and who had a wonderful teacher at the time, mind you, who was always wonderful to me, wonderful woman. And I will never forget, I went in, and CM was right behind me. And this is uncomfortable for me to talk about, but that's what I'm talking about. I went in, I sat down, and I let out this big sigh. And the teacher was like, oh, like, TJ, what's up? And I was just, oh, people. And she was like, what do you mean, people? And I said, people making fun of me. And then I just lost it. I started crying, and I cried for, I want to say I cried for like probably 2 hours straight. I just let everything out I was holding in. So she like stopped everything she was doing and sat down and immediately started like, okay, well, like, what's going on? And CM kind of helped. He was like explaining it. So I couldn't even talk. I was so upset. I just let everything out, everything I was holding in. Because this whole time, I never like sat in my room and cried or anything. I never like talked to anybody about it really. So it all came out on one day. And, she was like, who is doing this? Like, this is not happening in our school. And I kind of reluctantly said who it was and the other person who was kind of involved. And I recall immediately her getting the vice principal, who was another wonderful woman, and who basically pulled me in a room and was like, go through what was going on. And I kind of calmed down a bit at that point. So I explained everything in great detail, and she was like, nope, not in my school. So the next thing I know, I'm put back in the room and I'm chilling, and then they bring me into a room with the two of them. And this is the only thing I didn't really agree with 100% when I was a kid. Looking back on it now, I'm like, that was kind of a messed up thing to do to a kid who is being bullied, is to put him in a room with his bully and his friend. And basically they were like, we're going to hash this out. We're going to talk about this right now. Like, I was not ready for that on that day. I did not expect that. Second I saw them, I started freaking out. And I was crying, and I was like, I don't want to be in here with them. I don't want to do this. And she was like, no, we're doing it right now. Because in her defense, it worked. It stopped everything. But I mean, it was hard. It was really hard for me to deal with. And I, again, ran through everything. They told their side of the story, which they tried to paint me like I was making fun of them back mercilessly. And I'm like, are you joking? There was one day I stood up to you. So like, that was kind of not cool of them to do. But at the end of the whole thing, they realized that like, okay, we were taking this too far. They apologized. We shook hands. They went about their ways, and we never really spoke again. I want to say the one guy, he came to me after. Well, actually, he did for sure come to me after, and he kind of was like, hey, man, sorry about all that. I knew it wasn't cool. And I was like, that is what it is, man. And that was pretty much it for grade school. And, the next year, there was kind of a little bit of stuff like that going on, but nothing serious. It was all dealt with. My grade 6 teacher was the best. He saw it happening and was just like, because he saw it happening, and he was like, haha, nope. And, not saying my grade 5 teacher would know, but she didn't see it happening. They were very smart about it, whereas the people who bullied me in grade 6 weren't smart about it. So that was basically my experience with that. And I spoke a little bit earlier about how I did have some experiences in high school with it, though it wasn't that bad, all things considered. But basically, they're two pretty quick stories. There was two particular people, one of which it was simply he would make fun of me because he thought a certain way about some of the people I hung out with. He basically he was like, oh, you guys are all nerds and losers and geeks and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, at that point in my life, I was almost to the point where I was like, this is not cool. Like, this is bullshit. And I wasn't as big as I was when I was like 16. So I was still like a small, basically a fat kid. So I didn't really have the confidence to stand up for myself, but we would sit and he would come over with some of his friends and they'd make fun of us. And his one friend one time kind of tried to stop him, which is what you do in that situation. And he just kind of shooed him off and was like, dude, shut up. Like, and he would make fun of me about, how I looked, about, some of the company I kept, which is, again, that is a whole other conversation for another time about them bullying my friends and stuff. But it was pretty crappy to come to school every day and have this guy, and this was in grade 9. It's like right at the beginning of grade 9. And he would make fun of that, and he would make fun of like stuff I was into, because at that point I wasn't into music yet, really. I was getting into music, but what ended up happening was the one day I realized he was being bullied. And I saw it happen firsthand. And by some weird 6 degrees of separation, I knew his bully. And I didn't know this person was a bully, mind you. So I saw it happening. And I went up to the guy who was bullying him after the thing. And I was like, dude, what was up with that? And he's like, oh, TJ, what's up, man? And I was like, no, like, what was up with that? Oh, that kid's a loser, man. Like, he's weird. And I'm like, I don't care. You don't do that. That's not who you are, is it? Are you a bully? And he's like, I'm not a bully. And I'm like, you just bullied him. And he kind of like was like, oh, wow. Like, you're right. Like, that kid kind of started it, but I guess I kind of maybe went a little too far, huh? And I was like, yeah, you did. He was like, all right. Like, and he went over to him and he apologized. He said, I don't know what I've done to invoke your kind of crap talking, but I apologize for what I said and blah, blah, blah. And they were kind of cool. And afterwards, he just kind of looked at me and he was really confused. And we had one class together. And I remember he kind of like, we were sitting close to each other and he just kind of looked at me and he's like, hey man, like, you didn't have to do that. And I was like, well, I saw a way I could help you when I did. And he was just like, well, why? And I was like, 'cause I know how it feels. And then we also realized that we both liked a lot of the same music. So, because I think he noticed I happened to have I had my brand new MP3 player at the time, not even an iPod yet. And I think he happened to see one of the songs, and he was like, "Oh, dude, you like that one?" I'm like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "What? Oh my god!" It's like we started talking about that, and we became friends. And it's this weird thing where like I didn't really stand up to him per se, but like it never really bothered me. But it was, like he was bullying me. It never really bothered me because at that point, like I was pretty secure with who I was as a person, as far as in my adolescence anyway. And I was just like, man, like I saw that this guy's going through the same thing and I could stop it. So I did. And sometimes that's all you have to do. Just like, yo, man, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? And it's like, oh, I'm not doing that. It's like, yeah, you are. You're being a bully, don't be a bully. It's that simple. And then we became friends. Me and my, minor bully, we'll say. And it's just like, man, like that's crazy to think about. It really is crazy to think about. And then the other time was a little worse because this guy would like threaten physical violence. Never came to that point because it never got to that point. I wouldn't put myself in a situation where it wouldn't get to that point. But I remember, what I just realized, let me backtrack for a second here to the first guy. There was an incident where they used to do these like weird like little like grappling brawls in the locker room, which is the dumbest stuff, but it happened. And one day I walked in and this guy, the first bully I was talking about there from my high school days, was like standing there and all these guys were like, oh no, man, TJ would totally kick your ass. And I was like, whoa, what? Like, what is going on? And then he basically just attacked me. And this guy at the time I don't remember what degree of belt he was, but like he was trained. I was not. I had no idea how to fight anybody or anything. And he took me down and he put me in some kind of hold and I sat there. Actually, I believe he just started choking me, if I remember correctly. And from what I can recall, I flipped him over and I like tried to get him to stop and he kept choking me out. And then people pulled him off me. It was like, oh man, he just kicked your ass. And like I got up and I was so freaking upset because like I was like, I didn't do anything to start this. I didn't want this, and so that sucked. But that's really the only physical bullying I ever had, aside from one time being somewhat jumped in in the weight room by two guys, but that wasn't bullying because they were just being stupid idiots, and that's neither here nor there. But back to the second person, basically, he would threaten physical violence on me. He would talk about like how I was a loser and, again, I was a fat kid. He would make fun of the fact I went to special ed, which was really interesting because he also did. But for him, it was like, oh, no, you're actually stupid. Like, I was like, what? And he would make fun of the music I listened to. He'd make fun of the way I would dress. And like at that point, I was kind of getting into the style I had in high school, which, I look back on now and I'm like, oh God, #affliction in my veins. But we're not going to talk about TJ's style in high school. And just, like I would like kind of try to stand up there and he'd just be like, I'm just going to kick your ass, dude. Like, blah, blah, blah. And like I was intimidated by him. And one day I kind of made this really blunt realization that I'm bigger than him by quite a bit. And I was sitting with my friend and he was making fun of both of us pretty mercilessly. He was saying that we were homosexual with each other, and he's making fun of him for the way he lives his life, which was in a religious way. And he was just ragging on him mercilessly. And that being said, too, at the time we were in a classroom, the teacher did nothing and she totally knew something was going on. So that's kind of a little weird, but another story for another time. And it hit me when I was like, dude, just stop. And he literally looked me right in that and he was like, what are you going to do about it? And he pushed me. And I was sitting in a desk and he was like, he came over and pushed me and then he took like a bunch of steps back. And I got up and I made a beeline to him and I was ready to go. I was like, I'm going to take this bully down right freaking now because I'm done. I am done with it. And I realized I'm bigger than him. I've never been in a fight before, but by God, I'm going to go down swinging. And at that moment, there was a split second where I saw fear in his eyes. And he realized, oh shit, like this is about to happen. He thought I was going to be a pushover. And that was when he realized, uh-oh, this is not happening. And the teacher kind of like put a stop to it. Like, whatever. And later on, I didn't, there was no more bullying after that. And later on, I want to say it was the next year, we realized we had a lot in common. We both loved wrestling. So we talked about it, and, you know, and we were in a couple of the same classes. And kind of the one day he was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry." I was like, "It's all good. Like, we're cool now." And he said to me, you know, the day that you like basically stood up and were ready to fight me, he's like, I realized that like, oh crap, like I bit off more than I could chew. But then also he realized like that what he was doing wasn't cool. And from what I remember, he was pretty cool to everybody after that point. And it's a lesson that, you know, you don't always have to be a bully. And if you are a bully in high school or in grade school or middle school, you can stop. You can move on from that life. It doesn't have to define who you are. If you are a bully or you were a bully, it doesn't mean you always have to be one. And those guys are proof of it. I can attest that they both became great guys. And I don't know how they're doing in life now. I don't have any communication with either of them anymore. But that being said, you know, I wish them the best. I was the best case scenario as far as with bullying and surviving bullying and that. Mine was not that bad. When I was younger, like that was definitely, and like I said, there's some stories obviously I left out because they're not as interesting as that one. But, you know, I'm the prime case of, you know, I said something to an adult with the first bullet and it stopped. I stood up for myself technically in a way with the second one. And then the third one, I was ready to go. I was ready to go ham. I was ready to get physical because he got physical with me. And so that is why in some scenarios, unfortunately, the only way to stop a bully is physically. And I'm not saying that's the best option, but I am saying sometimes that's the reality of the situation. Now, we come to our kind of main event, which is I'm going to narrow this story down to kind of the Cliff Notes version as to what happened to trigger this whole line of thought in my head and send me on this bit of a rant here today on the show. And that is, I cannot stand. I can't deal with it. It makes me violently angry. Okay? Even now as an adult who, you know, I have temper tantrums and I can be a spaz quite a bit. It's something that it's a self, what's the word I'm trying to say here? It's a self-reflective flaw of mine. And it's not that I have an anger issue. No, it's not that. I have these little spaz outs or little temper tantrums. And it's embarrassing, it's ridiculous, but whatever. It's beside the point. But I'm not a violent person. I'm not the guy who's going to be like, yo, fuck you, bro. That's not me. Like, it's just not me. If you start something, I'm going to do my best to finish it. I'm going to go down swinging. I'm going to get a couple good shots in, or I'm going to take it and, you know, lucky in an armbar or something, you know, to shoot, brother. But like, it's not me. You know, it's not who I am. However, if there's one thing I can't stand, it's when I witness any kind of bullying or abuse of any kind to a customer service worker or in my work. Now, I don't witness this in my work because it just doesn't happen. Nowadays with work environment, which is good because it definitely used to happen for sure. But like, it doesn't really happen because, you know, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There's too much going on. You don't get away with it anymore, which is good. You see something, you say something, all that fun stuff. However, there is, in my opinion, not enough being done to protect customer service workers. What I mean by that is fast food workers, people who are servers at restaurants, people who work in retail, people who, you know, work over the phone with stuff, people who work at gas stations or, you know, anything and all like that. In my opinion, not enough is being done. And what triggered me on this whole thing was yesterday, I was at a location. I'm not going to say what because I'm a little sketched out about the whole thing. I'm not going to lie because like I want to say someone was recording it. So maybe one day that video will be on YouTube. I mean, I think it's acceptable. I didn't do anything. I just put a stop to something. I was standing there in line. I walked up behind. This guy was at this cash, and the girl on cash, she couldn't have been older than, oh my God, like maybe 17, 16 years old. To me, she was a kid, 10 years younger than me at least. And it's this big guy, for sure an ex-jock. You know, you could just tell by looking at him. And that's me stereotyping. But you know what? It's fine. Because in my experience, a lot of jocks I've met are assholes. Just saying. I tell it like it is, folks. That being said, I've also met some nice jocks, but let's move on from that. But he's putting this stuff on the counter, and you can just have a look at him. He's just miserable. So I'm like, whatever, you know. Like, I notice these things about people, and I'm like, hey, he's having a bad day, is what it is, you know. And then I hear this commotion, and I look, and this guy is screaming at this girl about the price of an item. It was bread, actually. He said it's supposed to be 2 for 1, and she explained to him that was another type of bread that he didn't have. And basically he said, just give me the damn bread for the price I want. And she was like, I'm really sorry, sir, but like I can't change the prices. And he starts calling her the C word and blah, blah, blah. Starts screaming at her. And she's like trying to find a manager, and no one's coming over. And I'm witnessing this, and I'm like, okay, like, we are taught in customer service that if you come at somebody a certain way when they're being like that, it's only going to make it worse, which is correct. So you have to try and, you know, stop it as professional as you can. Most of the time when someone intervenes that is not the person they're yelling at, the person will stop a lot of the time, at least in my experience. But I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, like I really want to get involved right now. And I'm standing there like shaking. So I'm getting so mad at this guy's doing this. And I'm like, man, like, damn. And that was when I noticed the girl was like shaking and crying. She was scared. And, you know, there was someone else trying to get involved who worked there. And like, he's just telling them to mind their own business. And he's being a bully. He was bullying this girl. He was trying to bully her into giving him what he wanted. Which is bullying, by the way. Harassing a customer service worker is bullying, and you're literally a piece of crap if you do that. There's no denying it. If you abuse any kind of a customer service worker for any reason, you're a piece of crap. If you get a little upset because something's not done correctly for something you paid for, I think that is a little different. I think it's still, in a lot of ways, unacceptable. But going the extra mile, come on, you don't do that. And the second this guy realized this girl's crying, it's almost like blood in the water for him. Because there's this like little sign sitting there. And when I got involved was when he looked at this little sign and he smacks it off the counter or whatever the hell. And the girl like is like afraid. And I just went, okay, that's that. And I went over and I tapped him on the shoulder and I said, dude, you need to relax. So he turned his attention to me and I gave her the look and I kind of gave her like the get out of here nod. And she took off and he just like got right in my face and was like, you need to mind your own business, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, dude, you're being a bully. You're being an idiot. I don't like bullies. So stop. You're being ridiculous. You're yelling at someone over the price of bread, which was, by the way, the difference was like $1.50, just for the record. And he's losing his mind on me. And I kept saying to him, you're being a bully. You're being ridiculous. Everyone is realizing how ridiculous you are being. You need to relax. And he kind of like, he stopped for a second and he looked at me and I saw out of the corner of my eye, he was balling up his fist. And I was like, okay, here we go. And I just looked him right in the eye and I was just like, relax. You're being a bully. You need to chill out. And I kept saying bully. And the reason why I kept saying that, by the way, most people don't think when they're being a bully, they're being a bully. And a lot of people don't like being called a bully. Most people don't. Some people it's a badge of pride, but that's another story. And he just kind of like realized what he was doing and he did chill out. And like, he was like, oh, like, I'm sorry, I'm having a really shitty day. And I said, I don't care if you are having a shitty day. You do not take it out on someone else like that. It is ridiculous. You do not be a bully to somebody because you are having a shitty day. I said to him, you don't know what that person was going through. You don't know anything about that person. It's just because they're a target. because they can't say anything back, which is bullshit, by the way. And he, got his stuff and he paid for it and he left. And I stood there and made sure he left because I was like, this guy's not, like, I wasn't having it. And I just kind of stood there for a minute afterwards, got my composure because I was really mad. I was ready to jump this guy. Like, I was like, I'm like, if he threw a punch at me, I would have been like, okay, let's go outside. Because I wasn't worried. I was like, yeah, he's a big guy. And I'm like, yeah, I might get my ass kicked, but I'm like, I'll get a couple good shots in. And I'm just like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to stand by anymore and watch this kind of shit happen when I can put a stop to it. I won't put up with it at my work. If something like that happens and I see it happen, I will go up and say something. It's my job to intervene and be like, hey, like, what's the problem here? Can I help you? Like, what's going on? I have to be a lot more polite about it, obviously. But if you are out somewhere and you see this kind of thing happen, say something. Get involved. Okay? I'm not saying grab the guy by his throat and throw him out. I'm not saying that. I'm saying just like, dude, what's your problem? Relax. Chill out. Take a walk. Come back. Deal with this. If you're screaming at somebody the moment where they're making them cry because they put something in your coffee that wasn't supposed to be there, you're a bully. And if you're listening to this right now going, oh, but TJ, that's really frustrating. Yes. It's frustrating. Guess what? Happens to me too. Where I go to a restaurant and I'm like, hey, can I get my steak medium rare or whatever? And they bring me out a steak that's well done. Yeah, it's frustrating. But I'm not going to turn around and go to the waitress and be like, hey, you stupid bitch, get over it. You don't do that. 9.5 times out of 10, if you're polite and say, hey, like, I don't mean to be a bother, but I asked for my steak medium rare. Is there any way I can get a new steak? 9.5 times out of 10, they're like, oh my God, like, yeah, I'm so sorry. Like, they're going to fix it. That's their job. You start screaming at them, you're a bully. You're an idiot. Stop. And I have no sympathy for you if you get knocked out because you're being an asshole. Or if you're on the train and, actually I've seen this happen too, where you're on the train and, you're taking up 2 seats and someone is standing there and like this little old lady and they're like, hey man, like, come on, like let this little old lady sit next to you at least. And they're just like, yo, I don't care, man. Screw you. It's like, you're still being a bully and you're an asshole. And if you get knocked out because of it, guess what? That's the path you chose. Or if you're alienated because of the way you are, that's your choice. I want to believe that everybody has good in them. And I want to end off with this thought here. It is so much easier to just be nice to people, guys. It is so much easier. Be nice, be respectful, be kind. It's not hard. It's so easy. It is a lot easier to see somebody and just be like, how's it going? What's up? Than it is to like talk crap to them and bully them. And it's a lot easier to, if you don't like something about somebody and you want to make fun of them for it right in front of them and stuff, it's so much easier. There's an old saying, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. If you have nothing nice to say about somebody, don't say anything to them. That's simple. It is so easy in this day and age to get into a negative rut and to be a bully, to be an asshole. But it is also just as easy, in my opinion, to just be nice, be kind. It's so, and it sounds silly. Some people are like, oh, be kind. No, it's just be cool, be respectful, be #be mean. Which, by the way, mean doesn't mean the same thing anymore. See what I did there? Haha. There is a thought that I like to keep a lot. And it is the mean beard thing in that. And that's all, it's another conversation. But, there's this whole thought of this positive aggressive attitude. And, bullies get brass. And what that means is we're not going to put up with bullying. We're not going to stand for it. And it's up to people like us. If you're listening to this right now, you, especially still now at this point in the podcast, you agree with me. I'm sure you agree with me. And it's up to us to do something about it when we see it. It's up to us to stand up for the person that can't stand up for themselves or who don't want to stand up for themselves. It is up to us to put a stop to it. And I'm at the point in my life, especially now, I've always felt this way, but especially now, if I see something like that, I am not going to put up with it anymore. I'm just not. If you're yelling at a customer service worker, or you're yelling, I see a couple kids yelling at another kid and being a bully, I'm going to say something. I'm going to step in. I'm not going to step in and fight kids or anything. Let me reiterate that point. But I'm not going to put up with it. Bullying is unacceptable, and it's up to us to put a stop to it. Just be cool. Just be nice. Be kind. Help each other out. It's so much easier than being an asshole. And that's all I got. That's it, man. Jeez, I feel so much better. I feel I have had this cathartic release of all these energies in my body. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this whole podcast, man. Whoever you are, you're the best. You just, especially listening to this whole podcast. If you have anything to say about anything I've spoken about, please hit me up. Let me know, your experiences with it, or with bullying, or if you have maybe an organization that helps us try and stop bullying or anything like that, hit me up. Let me know. I think that it's something that, again, does not get talked about enough. And I made a little video on my own personal Instagram, which is just TJ Hodder, HODDER, about the incident. And it was a very passionate video, and it's been shared a couple times. And people were just like, man, good for you for doing that. And I'm like, yeah, good for me, but let's be good. It's good for us that there are people like us in the world who will say something. We're not going to put up with it anymore. That is the message we need to send to bullies, that we are not going to put up with it anymore. Done. Done and done. I need to stop talking about it because I'm getting riled up again. But thank you for listening. Regardless of how you did so, if you're listening on the SoundCloud, be sure to hit that follow button. If you're listening on the iTunes, Stitcher, Castbox, Pod Knife, freaking Spotify, be sure to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening on Podcoin, my new friends at Podcoin, be sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know that you're listening to me. And I definitely appreciate it. I can see actually who listens to the show if you make an account, but let me know. And let me know what you're listening to too. Let me know some podcasts I should check out on there, because Podcoin is definitely the only way I listen to podcasts now. And be sure, of course, to follow The Harder Show on social media. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under The Harder Show. That is The Harder Show. If you have anything you want to say, contact me anytime at thehardershow@gmail.com. Website, podbeannetwork.com/The Harder Show, which is now back up and running. Thank the Lord. That was a lot of BS, but I talked about that a little bit in the intro, so I'm not going to go into it. And thank you so much for tuning in. Always remember, be cool, be nice, be kind, be mean. Positive aggressive attitude, man, and positive mental attitude go a long way in life, folks. Just saying. Stand up for little guys, stand up for the people who need it, and we will be much better as a society. And that's going to do it for me here today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time on The Harder Show. Peace out, everybody.